Good morning to everybody. We welcome you this morning, and as has been announced in our announcements today by Brother Vic Rossi, I want to share a special announcement with the congregation before we begin this morning's sermon. Jeannie is working this fall, this semester, at a school setting at South Range in Champion, close to Columbiana, Canfield, I mean. And she actually had planned to wrap up last summer or the spring, but she got a call to assist with a 12-week maternity leave for the occupational therapist who was expecting. And it is at a school setting that she really likes, so she went ahead and took that additional 12 weeks. So she will now officially be retiring a few days before the upcoming Christmas holiday. Our elders have been kind enough to grant me and Jeannie what we're calling a 3-month sabbatical that is going to take place, Lord willing, in January, February, and March. Jeannie and I will be spending the bulk of these 3 months with our family in Yuma. You know, they stayed with us for 3 months, so we're going to go stay with them for 3 months. In the world of education, a sabbatical is usually viewed as a time-off allowance for a special project, research, writing a book, something like that. But for me, this sabbatical is going to be a time of complete rest and relaxation. I mean, we may do something a little bit stressful or strenuous, but not planning to do much that way in those 3 months. I have been preaching now for 45 years, and I have to be honest with you in telling you I'm getting a little bit weary, and maybe that's a reflection on my own personality, I don't know, but before you be too critical, put yourself in my shoes or the shoes of a preacher who is charged with preaching the word from week to week, and over the years this adds up. So I want to use this time to recharge my batteries and my brain in particular. I'm committed to returning in April of next year after this 3-month sabbatical with plans to finish out 2021 as your preacher. And of course, that decision is contingent upon two things: your willingness as a congregation for me to continue, and secondly, my physical health and a desire on my part to continue. If I should return with plans to retire at the end of 2021, I will make those plans known as soon as we get back from Arizona. I honestly don't think we can do it at this point in time. We're not quite financially ready, but I don't want to rule that out because it's maybe a slim possibility. But if that proves to be the case, if we return in April and I sit down with the elders and I say, I just don't have it in me to finish up beyond 2021, then I would imagine that the scenario would be that our elders will promptly, shortly thereafter, begin to make plans to put together a search committee to look for a new preacher. And if we should have that bilateral agreement where you want me to stay a little bit longer and I desire to stay a little bit longer beyond 2021, then as we've spoken candidly and freely among the elders here, We'll just reassess that as we go. I'm going to be 67 on the day after Christmas, and my intentions as of this moment are to wrap up my preaching career no later than 2023, perhaps before that. Now, as to a few specifics, and I don't want to be too melodramatic about this, but I'm just not flying the coop without making some preparations, and we have a good congregation, and there's lots of you that will be helping out in some way. So while I'm away, first of all, I'm going to be forfeiting 10 weeks of 10 weekly salaries. I will take a 1 month vacation pay for each of the three months, but that forfeiting my salary, I'm going to do that while we're gone for the most part. And I'm thankful to tell you that Vic Rossi and Rob Espinoza have agreed to do the bulk of the preaching while I'm gone, while I'm away. And there may be others. I know Vic and Rob are not opposed to any others that might be interested. Some of our other men, maybe some that aren't with us today that will be with us later. So perhaps those others with an interest. I'm not overlooking Brian, but Brian seems to be out of necessity forced into that song leading. Of course, Brian, you can do two things. Yeah, you can lead singing and preach on the same day. It's been done before. So I don't want to rule out Brian taking part there either, but the lion's share, I think, of that 3-month preaching will be done by Vic and Rob, and we appreciate their willingness and good spirit. We're working from the assumption, and it may end up being just that, it may change. We're working from the assumption that we're not going to be having Sunday school during those 3 months, or a midweek Bible group during those 3 months, and that is primarily because of the testy hangover from the COVID virus. Every time we think we're doing a little bit better, it seems to switch things around, and we go back to the red zone. Keith Chopik doesn't know it yet, but he's going to oversee the Sunday service schedule in recruiting ones to lead our assembly. So Linda, I don't even know where he got off to, but you tell him when he comes in that he's got to, actually he does that already, but he just usually takes it off of what is on the newsletter. If anyone, excuse me, if anyone would like to publish our Family Matters, the hard copy edition, during this time span from January to March, please let our elders know. And if there's anyone who would like to take charge of updating our church website with some news and notes, we begun to do that at the start of the pandemic, and it's proven to be helpful to quite a few. Rob Espinoza is going to continue to manage the posting of sermons to our website as well as other material. So if any of you want to help in those ways, please do so. While Jeannie and I are gone, we have every intention of sending back our weekly contributions, offerings, probably in the form of 1 check a month for those. And I tell you that to let you know that we're not eager to cut the cord and just fly away here. We love our church family, and we're praying for a smooth transition. I can't believe Jeannie's as old as she is. Somebody asked her the other day, and when she said that, I thought, there's just no way this can all have happened. And of course, we all experienced that. This past summer, one day we rode up to the lake and we went to Camp Judson, and rode around a little bit, and it just seems like yesterday that me and Rossi and Chopik were there, and Deb in the kitchen and others, and we were all young and had so much in front of us, and now we've grown older. Well, look, I'm getting off my notes here. But so we want to all be praying for a smooth transition. The time has come. It won't be too far away, even if it comes early here. Jeannie and I love our church family, and we want absolutely nothing but what's the best for you as a church. And some of you are aware that I voluntarily, the elders didn't come to me and ask me this, I offered it. I took a $5,000 a year pay cut last year, and what we're doing in this essentially represents another $5,000 pay cut. And I have expressed publicly and privately to others that one of my goals when I reach retirement, I hope that we'll have paid down our debt on the building. And it was so nice to be able to pay off the pavilion. And now we just lack, not a whole lot, but some yet on the building. And I'm thinking that maybe this might allow us to eradicate a little bit more of that debt. It would be so nice to come to the point where we need a new preacher and not have any debt hanging over our head. That would be my goal. And I want to say one more thing at this time, just to quash any rumors before they might get started. Jeannie and I have no immediate impending plans to sell our house and to move elsewhere. Now, I'm not going to tell you that that's set in concrete and that those plans could not change. But as of this time, we're not planning to move anytime immediately. So our only other goal is that maybe in the time between now and my full retirement that we might be allowed to spend a little more time with our loved ones in Arizona. And we'll have to work that out as we go along if we stay beyond next year. Well, I hope that didn't shock anybody. I think everybody knows that something like that's been coming, and maybe it might be a cause of celebration for some to hear. Maybe you've been praying for this for a long time. Let's turn our attention now to the Word of God. And I'm going to be brief this morning in light of the time that we've spent with the announcement here. This lesson will be short, but I do think it has the potential to be a very important lesson, maybe one of the more important ones we'll ever hear, as far as giving us guidance in life. So instead of referencing a slew of passages today, we'll focus primarily on one. We will pull in a few others as we go along, but I'm talking about now primarily from the book of Proverbs. In the past, we were looking at a subtopic and then gathering several texts from the book of Proverbs about that same or a similar subject. But on this one, we're just looking at one primary text, and that's Proverbs 11 and verse 25. And really just this one verse, although Fred read this morning the broader context of it. Let me share from several different translations. It'll be a little bit repetitious as we begin, but the New American Standard, which is what I'm using, says, "The generous man will be prosperous, and he who waters will himself be watered." That is where we got the title for the sermon. The NIV, "A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." Sounds like the version Fred might have been reading from. The New Century Version, "Whoever gives to others will get richer. Those who help others will themselves be helped. The EJK, the liberal soul, or this is actually the ESV, I'm sorry. Whoever brings blessings will be enriched, and one who waters will himself be watered. And then the King James Version, the old King James, says the liberal soul will be made fat, and he that waters shall be watered also himself. Now, I would just urge you, after quoting from the King James, don't think of fat here as being obese in an unhealthy sense. Oftentimes in ancient times, the word fat connoted the idea of being well supplied and joy-filled, to live a fat life. The Amplified Version, and this is the last one we'll reference, the generous man is a source of blessing and shall be prosperous and enriched. And he who waters will himself be watered, reaping the generosity he has sown. I think if I had to choose one single proverb that has the greatest capacity to shape and alter our lives for the good, this Proverbs 11 verse 25 would have to be a top contender. I know it's never fair to do that, to say just pick one, but if you had to choose from all of Proverbs, there's so many wonderful Proverbs within the book of Proverbs. If you had to just choose a handful that seemed to have more power to direct our lives, this would certainly be, I think, around the top of the list. Although this proverb is a truism, we don't always act as if it's so obvious. That's kind of what a truism is. It's a statement of truth that is obvious to everybody. But when we read these words, he who waters will himself be watered, we don't always act like we really believe that. It's true. It works. And it works because it's ordained of God. But it also requires the obedience of faith to put it into action. So I want to think just for a few more minutes here about how do we water the lives of others? Now, I feel confident that you know that this proverb is not just focused on monetary remuneration. The Latin term is kind of a quid pro quo, which really just means this for that. In other words, we're not being told here, go out and water so that you can get some water in return. That happens, but the motivating factor for why we water is not just so that we can get something good in return. In other words, this is not, I will give you $100 and I'll anticipate that sometime soon I'm going to get my $100 back. That's not Proverbs 11:25 in its purest sense. Neither is it, I will give you $100 with the assurance from God that I'm going to get back my 100, even with interest to boot. That's not in its purest sense what this passage is saying. Watering may take place when we engage in assisting others financially. But there are so many other ways, so many numerous ways to water. I once heard Pete Nash, who preaches for the church that meets on Parkman Road, our brethren over there. I once heard Pete tell the story, and he told it with genuine emotion. Maybe some of you remember this if you were at the same gathering that we were at. Pete told the story, and he told a cold winter that he had in Tony and Margaret took him to the store and bought him a nice winter coat. And as I say, he practically cried, reflecting on that story. I know of another family that heard of a legitimate need, and they went out and bought a brand new fridge with no strings attached. Now, I'll tell you, we had a fridge breakdown this summer, and with the pandemic, some appliances have been really tough to get. And it seems like fridges cost a lot more than they used to. For one reason, they've got more things. I'm showing you how, this shows how old I am. There's more things on them to break down than there ever used to be. But so actually, I was delighted that Bettina was with us, and I sent her and Bettina on a mission to just, I said, just go find a fridge that fits the spot we need and buy it. Just go put it on a charge card and buy it. And don't dally, because they're being gobbled up, and so they came back and they got one, and it wasn't cheap, but that effort, doing that was for us. And as I said, it was a pretty big ticket item, relatively. And to just do that for somebody else with no strings attached, just because you heard that they had fridge problems or their fridge quit and they couldn't afford to get a new one, that gets at the heart of maybe what this text is calling to our attention. Stinginess is not a Christian virtue. And God blesses those whose generosity includes opening their wallet. Jesus, I think, knew this proverb well. And as it's recorded in Luke's account of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus not only reiterated this proverb in its essence, but he embellished it, made it even more ornamental, not telling a fib about it. He just made it even more beautiful than what it appears to be in the book of Proverbs. This is found in Luke chapter 6 and verse 38. Listen to Jesus, where he said, "Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, they will pour into your lap." And then he added this word, for by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you in return. Think about those words from Jesus in light of Solomon's, "He who waters will himself be watered." Jesus is noted for hundreds of quotable quotes. If I were to ask us to go find the 10 most famous statements that Jesus ever made, we'd come back with a bunch of different ones. But we all have certain ones that we hold dear that Jesus spoke. And this quotable you can't find it in the Gospels. You can't find it anywhere in Scripture except as Paul referenced it when he spoke to the Ephesian elders in Acts chapter 20 and verse 35. But he spoke with such familiarity that it leads one to conclude that they all knew exactly what he was talking about. Paul said to them, "Remember the words of Jesus, that he himself said, 'It is more blessed to give than to receive.'" Seems like everybody in the Christian community knew that those words originated with Christ our Lord. God has blessed us abundantly, but this abundance is not restricted to just a dollar amount. Even poor people, as you know, can live a life of abundance. Sounds a little bit contradictory. My maternal grandparents were not at all well-to-do, but they were rich in so many ways. Some of you who may have humble beginnings in other places and from similar situations could reflect on the same thing. You might even be able to say, I didn't grow up with much, but boy, what we did have, we loved it. It was a wonderful home. Abundance is measured by much more than just dollars and cents. So oftentimes, our watering takes place in the form of doing good deeds to help others. Here is another. Proverbs 19 and verse 17 says, he who is gracious to a poor man lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his good deed. The he there is God. You lend to a poor man, you lend on behalf of the Lord, and the Lord will repay you. When Peter summarized the life of Jesus in Acts chapter 10 and verse 38, he said about Jesus that he went about doing good. And everybody that knew Jesus knew that that was one of the main drives of his life, that he went about doing good. The Apostle Paul wrote frequently about the importance of doing good deeds. In Galatians 6 and verse 2, he encourages us to bear one another's burdens and thus fulfill the law of Christ. Isn't that a nice equation? To think if you had to summarize the law of Christ, it's bearing one another's burdens. This is what we call the essence of Christianity. In Titus 2 and verse 7, Paul admonishes Timothy, he says, to be an example of good deeds. And then in Titus 3 and verse 8, he urges even more. He says to do not neglect, he says in Titus 3 and verse 8, to not only be an example of good deeds, but be careful to engage in good deeds. In other words, really pay attention to this. Intentionally engage in good deeds. And then in Hebrews 13 and verse 16, Paul, if he's the author, and I think he is, he warns, do not neglect doing good and sharing, for with such sacrifices God is well pleased. Whenever we're studying the scriptures and we read that a certain action pleases God, it needs to be underlined almost immediately. But beyond just being underlined in our study Bible, that thing that pleases God needs to be underscored and put into practice in our own Christian life. Excuse me. I'm not at all sick. I just have a raspy voice. I had my honey and lemon and tea this morning, but it didn't seem to do the trick. Thirdly and lastly, frequently we participate in watering by speaking good words. This might be where we use our watering tin the most, not just we, meaning me, I'm talking about all of us. Proverbs 18 and verse 21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Proverbs 25 and verse 11, like apples of gold in a setting of silver, is a word fitly spoken, or a word timely delivered. Much of our best watering comes from the words that we speak to others. And regarding this point, some of us need to give a little bit more forethought as to what we say when we say it, and how we say it. Our words have the capacity to tear down as well as to lift up. And we need to concentrate on the latter, the lifting up. Anybody can go out there and rip somebody up. But a child of God is directed to focus on edifying and building others up. And sometimes we remain silent when a word of encouragement could make such a difference. Last Sunday, we attended a memorial service for John Fisher, the father to Sue Richards and Debbie Bissell and Joan McAllister. And many of his family and friends who gave testimonials about his life spoke of John as a Barnabas. And they went on to describe how much he had encouraged them in so many different ways, that he was indeed a son of encouragement. I think sometimes we major on minors. That's why we're ripping each other up so often. But the better thing to do is for us to major on the majors. And that is where we look for things to say, to lift one another. Proverbs 11 and verse 24 affirms there is one who scatters, and that's the idea of giving, scattering. There's one who scatters, but he increases all the more. He's got this bag of grain attached to his side, and he's going out into the field, and he's scattering it all over, but the bag of grain keeps being refilled. You'd think he's scattering so much that he's going to end up, he has no grain. But the writer here says that's not his problem. When you scatter often, God will take care of the grain. And Proverbs 11 and verse 28 says, he who trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like a green leaf. I promised you brevity. Here is a lesson that is both short and sweet, so powerful, yet so significant. God sees all, God knows all, and he's not going to be hoodwinked by our self-serving interest. His spoken law for mankind will neither be overturned or laughed at. Galatians 6, verses 7 and 8, you know this passage. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that is what he will reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh shall from the flesh reap corruption. But the one who sows to the Spirit shall from the Spirit reap eternal life. I don't know who said this. I couldn't find out who made the quote, but it's on your little sermon box today, and it's a great quote. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. That's what Solomon is urging us to think on this morning. So let's leave here today more determined than ever to water the many others who are all around us. Let's bow in prayer. Heavenly Father, you have been to us a true Father of mercies and a fount of every blessing. We are so very grateful for the gift of salvation that comes to us through Christ Jesus our Lord. We are also thankful, Father, for the abundance that streams our way each and every day. We have so much that we don't know what to do with all we have. Help us to be a fountain of blessing, to water those that are all around us. Through Christ Jesus, the living water, we pray. Amen. Thank you not only for your good attention today, but also putting up with my raspy voice. I apologize for that. And if we can help any of you in your walk with the Lord this morning, we would be honored to do so. And Brian has chosen this song to be a word of encouragement to all of us. So let's stand together and sing.
Bring Christ your broken life, so marred by sin. He will create anew, make whole again. Your empty, wasted years He will restore, and your iniquities remember no more. Bring Him your every care, if great or small, whatever troubles you, oh, bring it all. Bring Him the haunting fears, the nameless dread. Thy heart He will relieve, and lift up thy head. Bring Him your weariness, receive His rest. Weep out your blinding tears upon His breast. His love is wonderful, His power is great, and none that trust in Him shall be desolate. Blessed Savior of us all, Almighty Friend, His presence shall be ours unto the end. Without Him life would be how dark, how drear, but none if morning breaks and heaven is near.